Okay, so our topic for today is how can we work best with the Sea Scouts? And this is a repeat I delivered this same talk for our district's D-Train about a month ago, and we had a very lively discussion about this topic. Of course, one of the questions that we get uh, pretty often is, why are we even bothering with AuxScout? And there are some pretty obvious answers, at least from my perspective. And I know that this is the same perspective that both the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Auxiliary has for this. This presents an opportunity to develop new resources and personnel for the auxiliary. You look at these young adults and their parents. These are the cream of the crop in their communities. They're motivated, engaged. They tend to be the top of the class. They often have skills that we don't have. Look at your average 16-year-old is going to be much more social media savvy and website design savvy than many Coast Guard auxiliaries, and they get Zoom and lots of other technology that is really new to us. And of course, another one is shared outreach in our boating safety mission. So while we didn't go into this relationship with the Sea Scouts with the focus on how many new people can we get into the Coast Guard Auxiliary, we are getting new people. Not only these young adults, but their parents, who by and large are younger than the average age of many Coast Guard auxiliaries. And in a day and age when I know the Coast Guard is looking for us to broaden the diversity of our membership, this is a really important component to what we're doing. And of course, the Coast Guard is very anxious to identify young people who are good potential enlistees or potential officer candidates for the Coast Guard. New program. First impressions are critical. And by this, what I'm talking about is most people don't know much about the Coast Guard, and they probably know even less about the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And what this program gives us an opportunity to do is to interact directly with young people and give them the opportunity to frame an opinion of what the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Auxiliary is all about. And if the impression they get is that we're just a bunch of grumpy old men, then yes, that's who we are, and that's what they'll think about us. And the future of the Coast Guard Auxiliary is not going to be for very long. On the other hand, if they get the impression that we are caring adults who have something to offer to them, and that we want to help them to prepare for life, prepare for college, prepare for careers, that's an important impression for them to get from us. We can provide adult mentorship for youth in our community, create positive impressions regarding the Coast Guard and community service. You know, this is a message that is all too rare in today's society. Um, how many people really get the importance of giving back to their community, giving back to the boating community, giving back to America? Well, this is a message that we can instill in these young people. Not just as, oh, well, I've got to do this, and instead it's of, I really appreciate this opportunity to give back and to make things better. And then, of course, creating a recruiting pipeline for the Coast Guard at all levels. And by that, I don't mean just active duty, but reserves, civilian careers, and of course, our beloved Coast Guard Auxiliary. So what are the opportunities for working with Sea Scouts? And we're going to be talking about public education events, vessel safety checks, public affairs, program visits to scout camps and shops, assistance with scout camporees, merit badge midways, and other training events. And of course, a lot of this is with the caveat that things are not normal right now with COVID, but things will eventually change, and some of these things we can be doing right now. So let's talk a little bit about this. What are the opportunities for working with Sea Scouts? Career education and guidance. Many of us have either careers in the maritime industry, or maybe we had prior service with the Coast Guard, or there are other things that we have done in our professional life that would be of benefit for the Sea Scouts to be exposed to and get interested in. The Sea Scouts have a rank advancement program that is meant to step them through their development of seamanship skills, but as well as leadership skills and planning and frankly just interpersonal skills and on-water activity and training. And what you're looking at here is the start of a man overboard drill at a safety at sea event that was held last year at the Curtis Bay Coast Guard Yard in Baltimore, Maryland. And as you can see, an auxiliarist is mentoring a Sea Scout in doing a cleat hitch. What they're about to do is to go out and they're going to throw an Oscar into Curtis Creek, and the Sea Scouts are going to rescue them, and they're going to go through that process. Okay. What are the objectives for doing this? Unit capacity, time, personnel. I'm sorry, what are the objections to doing this? We hear a lot of people ask, well, we can't really do this because of X, Y, and Z. And the things that we hear most often are, well, we don't have enough people. And so we really don't have the time or the people or the facilities to make this happen. And maybe I'm naive, but I've been a flotilla commander, a division commander, a district captain, and I've served in staff positions at the flotilla division, district, and national levels. And what I found is that people will always find a way to find the time to do the things that are important to them. So when somebody says, I don't have the time to do it, what I'm really hearing from them is that they haven't prioritized time to work with these motivated young adults. There's another concern about liability. Aren't we exposing ourselves to potential liability because we'd be working with young people? Well, that's a really good question, and that has been carefully and thoroughly explored by both the Coast Guard legal staff as well as the Coast Guard auxiliary legal staff. And the finding that they've had is that there's no more liability exposure in doing this than anything else that we do, from doing underway patrols to vessel safety checks or whatever. When we are assigned to duty, we are covered by the same coverage that we would have for doing anything else. You follow the rules, you do what the Coast Guard expects, you have no liability exposure beyond what we already do. Training requirements. There are some people who complain that to work with young adults, you're being asked to do some additional training. I have trouble being sympathetic with that. First of all, the youth protection training takes an hour and a half. The Sea Scout Adult Leader Basic Training takes about 4 hours. And then if you do on the water stuff, that's going to take you another hour or so of training. That's really not that much time. And you gain so much from that by getting involved with that training. And then there are some people who seem to think that working with Sea Scouts is somehow like working with a bunch of Cub Scouts. And I'm here to tell you that there's a world of difference between an 8-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl. A 16-year-old tends to be much more mature. They can take on responsibility. They understand right and wrong. That doesn't mean that they always do what you want them to do, but by and large, they do things really the way you'd hope they would. And I find that most Sea Scouts are as mature or perhaps even more mature than many of the adults that I work with. Other objections: PPE availability. Well, first of all, any Sea Scout to get out on the water is required to have a life jacket. In most cases, their unit provides the PPE. Now, if we take them out on a training mission on one of our OPFACs, and if they don't come with the appropriate PPE, yes, we're going to have to loan that to them. But in most cases, the Sea Scouts already have it. Availability of facilities to get the kids out on the water. Well, I've been working with Sea Scouts for quite a few years, and it is not difficult to get people to give boats to the Sea Scouts to make this happen. Or we can make our vessels available by going out under orders, or we can go out as volunteers. The logistics, documentation, and what if the mission changes? And so what we're talking about is, what if you want to take Sea Scouts out on a training patrol? Isn't that difficult to do? And the answer is not really. When you put in your order request, you make it clear in your order request that you're planning on taking X number of Sea Scouts or Sea Scout adults, and the order issuing authority will review that and decide whether the mission is consistent with taking teenagers out on a training mission. If they say no to your request, then it's a no. What we're finding is that in most cases, the order issuing authority does say yes. Don't try to hide it from them. Make it clear to them what you're planning on doing. And then uniforms. Well, as you can see, the Sea Scout uniform looks very much like our old summer working uniform, and it's not all that dissimilar from our ODUs. The kids have to buy their uniforms, but that uniform there will cost them about $35, $40 to purchase. So it's really not that expensive. It's actually less expensive than a Boy Scout uniform. So this is just from a presentation that the Chief Seattle Council's Sea Scouts did on what support is available. And there are support at a variety of different levels. The Boy Scouts of America provides support for Sea Scouting, and you're going to find that it's going to vary considerably from one council to the next. Some councils are really well prepared to help with Sea Scouting. In some other councils, there may be no Sea Scouting at all, and they really don't know much about the program, but the Sea Scouts have support available, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then, of course, support can be provided by the flotilla and the division, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Solutions to objections: capacity. This is a voluntary program, and first of all, nobody is telling your flotilla or your division that they must be involved with AuxScout. This is totally voluntary. On the other hand, the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Auxiliary is strongly encouraging you to get involved with it. Not because they're mean and nasty and they're just putting another mission that you don't want on your shoulders. The reason why is they're trying to look down the road. I don't know if the rest of you have noticed this, but the Coast Guard Auxiliary's membership numbers have been dropping steadily year over year for many, many years. When I joined the auxiliary 20 years ago, there were about 40,000 of us. Now there are something like 23,000. That should send a wake-up message to all of us. And yeah, you can say, well, there aren't as many auxiliaries, so why should we putting our efforts into this? And that is because what we're trying to do is to build a future for the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And unless you're willing to invest now, there may not be a tomorrow to have anything for. Access capacity and assess capacity and resources first. Look at what you have available to you. Some flotillas are so small that maybe chartering a Sea Scout ship is not the best option. On the other hand, they might be just the right thing to work with an already existing Sea Scout ship that could just use a little boost. You know, maybe somebody to teach some navigation or marine radio telephone or knots or some other facets of seamanship. Maybe you have somebody who is a ham radio operator, or they are a radio watchstander at a local Coast Guard station. They have skills the Sea Scouts need. Offer what you can. There are lots of levels of participation, and there's no shame if you can't offer something that isn't within your skill set or your resource availability. It's better to do something really well on a limited scale than to do a half-assed job on something that frankly you're just not capable of doing. Solutions to objections. Liability. The Scouts are covered by a very strong liability policy. So for them and for their adult leaders, BSA has them covered. For auxiliaries, if you are assigned to duty, you're covered by our liability coverage through the U.S. Coast Guard. That is carefully outlined in the standard operating procedure. You do what the standard operating procedure says, there is really no problem. And it's not like you're going to be constantly flipping to the SOP, but you do need to read that to know what the Coast Guard's expectations are. Auxiliary members acting as Scout leaders are covered by Scout liability insurance, and Coast Guard and Scout coverage are intended to reduce liability exposure. Follow policy to protect yourselves. And that's a point that you're going to hear from both BSA and from the U.S. Coast Guard. Follow policy. If you follow policy, you are not going to have a problem. Training. I was talking a little bit about this a moment ago. Anybody who works with scouting youth need to take the youth protection training, YPT. It's an hour and a half. It's available online. There is no final exam that goes with that. At the end, you get a completion certificate. You send a copy of that to your flotilla commander, who will send it into your DIROC's office. And I don't know whether 9th Western does it differently. That's the procedure that's spelled out in SOP. I do know that several districts do handle that differently, but you do need to have your YPT completion recorded in AuxData, and you need to keep it current by taking it at least every 24 months. If you're going to take Sea Scouts out on your vessels, or for you to go out on their vessels, you'll have to take a half-an-hour safety afloat training program. If you're going to be involved with anything having to do with AuxPad or any swimming related activity, then Safe Swim Defense is another half-hour program. Weather hazards is not required training, but it is really, really well done. It takes, I think, 45 minutes to complete, and it's really a training that I would recommend for any auxiliarist who does any activity out on the water. And then there are a variety of auxiliary and Scout member training opportunities. And as well, if you're going to be taking Scouts out on a vessel, somebody is going to have to be CPR and first aid trained as well. But that's all spelled out in the SOP. Sea Scout behavior. Sea Scouts are ages 14 to 20. And as a reminder, The Coast Guard is allowing Sea Scouts to join the auxiliary once they reach the age of 14. These young people are potential future coasties. Some are already old enough to enlist in the Coast Guard. The ships develop a code of conduct, and it's the youth who develop that code of conduct, and they agree to follow it. Our Sea Scout ship, the unit that I started in Columbia, Maryland, developed a code of conduct, and the kids regularly reviewed that to make sure that it continued to be relevant, and that what it said about, you know, expectations about personal behavior continued to address the real life needs of the ship. And the kids took it seriously. They enforced the rules, and they took responsibility. Sea Scout youth are in general very intelligent, motivated, and mature. What you're seeing in this photograph is Coast Guard Academy cadets on the Eagle summer cruise, and the young lady in the foreground who's looking away is one of the Sea Scout participants. We send a number of Sea Scouts on the Eagle summer cruise every summer, and they get a lot out of it. And of course, one of the reasons why the Coast Guard allows this is that these are exactly the young people that the Coast Guard is looking for to go into the Coast Guard, to take an appointment to the academy. Sea Scouts under the age of 18 must be accompanied by adult acting in loco parentis. Participation in Sea Scouting is a privilege, and access to auxiliary programs is also a privilege. PPE availability. It's interesting that I picked this photograph. I didn't know at the time who this young person was, but this young lady, you can see from her uniform at the time that she took this photograph was taken, she was a Sea Scout Able, which was the 3rd rank. After this photograph was taken, she earned quartermaster, and she is now a 2nd class at the Coast Guard Academy. And for the Safety at Sea event that our sector is putting on for Sea Scouts in a couple of weeks, she is going to be the one doing the presentation on the Coast Guard Academy and the Eagle. So we talked about PPE availability. It is not a problem. Truly, it is not a problem. Facility availability. Access of the auxiliary should complement existing programs, but not displace or replace them. We're not trying to substitute what we do for what the Sea Scouts are already doing. They have a really well thought out development program that teaches young people to be really good boaters and responsible citizens. According to Coast Guard statistics, Sea Scouts are the safest group on the water. There hasn't been a fatality in Sea Scouting since 1941. And the Sea Scouts learned important lessons from that, and it just doesn't happen. Yes, of course, you get your occasional cuts and bruises and occasionally a broken bone or whatever, but it is a very safe program because the safety protocols are very carefully thought out. Most Sea Scout units can provide their own vessels, and this can open up opportunities for us. Logistics and paperwork. Well, I hate to break it to you, but the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Auxiliary is very paperwork bound. I'm sure this is news to all of you. BSA is no different, but it's really not onerous. It doesn't take that much time to keep your T's crossed and your I's dotted, and the Scouts can help with the BSA piece of that. It's just really not an issue. Uniforms. Well, uniforms play a really important role in the Sea Scout program, And what we're looking at here is the typical uniform. I will mention to you that in the past, the Sea Scouts wore a crackerjack uniform that they got from the Navy. The movement away from that started in 2012 on the 100th anniversary of the formation of Sea Scouting in the United States. But there are some Sea Scout units that haven't transitioned to the new uniform. But I think this is a very Coast Guard friendly uniform. It works well with who we are. Council support. Councils are evaluated by on a number of things, and probably the two most important things is how many units they have and how many youth they support. So they are motivated to want to help us with supporting the Sea Scout program. And they have professional staff who are paid to help. And there are also volunteers, of course. So what should we be doing? We should be reaching out to Sea Scout Commodores. Not all councils have council Commodores, but many do. We need to get to know who they are and build bridges to them. All of the regions have regional Commodores, and all of the areas have area Commodores. And all of what 9th Western is in the central region of BSA. The Central Region Sea Scout Committee is very well organized. And as I mentioned yesterday, their regional Commodore is a Coast Guard auxiliarist in downstate Illinois, and his brother is an immediate past decap in 8th Western Rivers. Build those bridges, reach out to district executives, see about opportunities to introduce what we as the Coast Guard Auxiliary do to support scouting in general and Sea Scouting in particular, and turn it around and have the auxiliary offer vessel safety checks and boater safety training. Let me give you a really, really easy example of how that can be done. Most Scout councils have one or more Scout camps. Most Scout camps have waterfronts, and those waterfronts include canoes, kayaks, rowboats, sailboats, and even some motorboats. That's an opportunity to do vessel safety checks. I live in Baltimore Area Council, and my council Scout Camp, Broad Creek, has roughly 175 vessels for their waterfront. My wife and I go up to Broad Creek every year in January, and we do a whole bunch of vessel safety checks. The council loves us for it because we're giving them information about what they need to be doing to maintain those boats so that they come up to Coast Guard standards. And of course, our SOVE loves us for it because we turn in huge numbers of vessel safety checks early in the year, which looks great on our flotillas and our divisions VSC statistics. We can be offering boater safety training, offering the Maryland State Boating Class or BS&S or any other Coast Guard Auxiliary public education course. We can also provide member training for Sea Scouts. Earlier this year, our flotilla put on the Auxiliary Seamanship Specialty course. We had roughly 60 people registered for that. About 25% of them were Sea Scouts and Sea Scouts adults. Flotilla and division support. Starting and running a Scout unit is a lot of work. Go into it with your eyes open. Chartering organizations must commit to follow AuxScout and BSA policies. Flotillas can facilitate at different levels, assess your capacity and what you can do. Better to do a little very well. And remember that Sea Scouts and their families can make a strong addition to your flotilla. It's not just the Sea Scouts that we're looking at. We're looking at their parents and their adult leaders. Most of their parents are younger than the average age of auxiliaries. Wouldn't it be great if we were recruiting 40-something adults into our flotillas? We're going to get decades of service from them, rather than just focusing our energies on looking for retirees who are very important to us. But this is just another demographic that we can be recruiting. So what is the best way is what works for your unit. The options include limited participation once a year. Let's say that a ship needs to have you come in and teach coastal piloting because they don't have the expertise. Or maybe it's regular participation more than once a year. Maybe your flotilla can come in once a month and teach a topic. Or formal partnering with the Sea Scout ship. And let me tell you about that. I live in Annapolis, and there is a really good Sea Scout ship that is formally partnered with one of the local Coast Guard auxiliary flotillas. This flotilla provides 3 adults who come nearly every ship meeting, and they teach topics and they take them out on training opportunities underway. But they are not the chartered organization. In this case, the chartered organization is one of the yacht clubs in Annapolis and Eastport. But this flotilla and the Sea Scout ship are in a partnered relationship where they commit to support one another. And then the top level of possible relationships is chartering a Sea Scout ship. Not only are flotillas and divisions allowed to charter Sea Scout ships, they are encouraged to do that. That doesn't mean that you're required to do it, but up to this point, 15 flotillas and divisions have sponsored Sea Scout ships in 8 districts, and many more are in varying stages of being organized. Remember that you don't have to be an auxiliarist to help. Auxiliarists can be Sea Scouts as Sea Scout leaders for decades. You don't lose your knowledge, skills, or abilities when you take off your auxiliary uniform. So it's very important that you know what the memorandum of agreement and the standard operating procedures say. The memorandum of agreement, or MOA, commits the auxiliary to providing certain types of support to the Sea Scouts. We've adopted the Sea Scouts as our official youth program, and that means that we make training, leadership, and public affairs support available. The standard operating procedure, or SOP, outlines how specifically we should be working with the Sea Scouts. This document tells us what the Coast Guard expectations are and how we should go about doing this. Youth protection training. I think we've beaten this into the ground pretty well. This is the URL for getting to that training, and I'll provide you a link to everything you need to go back to at the end of this presentation. Okay, appoint district, division, and flotilla AuxScout staff officers. There's a listing of local Sea Scout ships at this address, this web address. You just plug in your zip code. There's also a local council locator, and as well there's a locator map at this address. And let me just show you what that looks. Oh yeah, I just flipped right by that. Here we go. This is the AuxScout map, and I've just zoomed into your area, and all of the dots are flotillas and all of the balloons are Sea Scout ships. And what you can see is that there are quite a few places where there are flotillas but no Sea Scout ships, and there are some places where there are Sea Scout ships but no flotillas. So for example, here's a Sea Scout ship in Marseilles, Illinois. In the Chicago area, there are quite a few flotillas, but there are also quite a few ships. So this will help you to figure out, is there a local ship in your area that you might be able to work with? Or maybe this is an area where you want to start a Sea Scout ship. And if you click in the background of an area, let's say that you live in Naperville, that's Three Fires Council, and there's a link to the local council website. So it just gives you some basic information of how to hook into the local BSA structure. If you want to hook into the Sea Scout structure, your best bet is to talk to Roy, who knows how to go about doing that. He knows his counterparts on the Sea Scout side. Recommended engagement, let me just show you. Recommended engagement activities. This is from a Safety at Sea event in Galveston, Texas. And you can see Coasties and auxiliaries teaching Sea Scout heaving line. Pair up with an existing ship. This ship is in Cary, North Carolina. They're being taken out on a training patrol with the local flotilla there. And you can see that the Sea Scouts are in a Sea Scout t-shirt, an activity t-shirt, and they'll be putting on PFDs before they get underway. But you can do things like vessel safety check days, public affairs booths, picnics. You know, it doesn't all have to be work. It can be social events, picnics, changes of watch, bridges of honor. Make yourself available and remember to have fun. You know, the kids learn from us, and if we're having fun, they'll have fun, and they'll frame a very positive view of who you are. You can go the route of starting a new Sea Scout ship, and this is a portion of a charter that the Coast Guard issued to a ship in North Carolina. I chopped off the bottom because it listed the names of the youth members of the ship, and we're trying to practice good youth protection here. But there's lots of good information about how to start a new Sea Scout ship, or to pick up a charter that maybe the organization that a ship is using isn't working out too well. Maybe it's a yacht club that is folding, or for whatever reason, they've decided that the Coast Guard Auxiliary is a better fit for what they're trying to do. Work with your local council. And then I have a member of my staff, Bart Knapp, who is one of his main jobs is to provide coaching for flotillas and divisions that want to start ships. Bart is also Roy's counterpart in 8th Coastal, so he gets it. You know, he is in your shoes and knows what this is all about. Do joint public affairs events at boat shows, boat stores, boat ramps, council scout shows. That'll give you an opportunity to promote the Coast Guard Auxiliary and boating safety to thousands of young people and their parents and their adult leaders. Order of the Arrow conclaves is another great place where you can promote that. The auxiliarists in sector North Carolina have been doing that for years, and that's really paid off for them. Quite a few scouts have chosen to join the auxiliary, and you know, isn't that an outcome that we're looking for? Safety at sea I've been talking about. There are a number of events, a number of these held around the country. We have a great page on AuxScout Wiki that I keep on alluding to. This is our online website that just hosts a wealth of information about what works and how to do it and where to get more information. So that's that. I'm looking at my time and I've been rambling on a little bit more than maybe I should. Provide training to Sea Scout ships, joint waterway projects. So take home messages. It's going to take some time to support Sea Scout programs, but the time is worth it. This is the best way to plan and prepare. Be honest with yourself about your capacity and interest. Establish partnerships and relationships. Do the best you can within your capabilities. The potential rewards are very high. Partnerships help spread the auxiliary message and encourage boaters to be safe and to motivate young people, not only just generally, but to learn about Coast Guard careers and to get involved in the Coast Guard family. And it creates a wide outward ripple effect. So these were the websites that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, so maybe you want to take a screenshot of this, or Roy can point you in the direction of these web addresses. Let me just go to the questions page. And this is Roy Bonus's contact information. He's your district staff officer for AuxScout. Here's his email address and telephone number. He's doing a great job for you. He probably knows most of the answers to your questions, but if he doesn't know the answers, he knows where to go to get answers. So we do have a couple of minutes. If there's anybody who has any questions or just something you'd like to mention, now would be a great time. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and let's talk.
Hey, good morning, Bruce. This is Harvey Randall. Hey, first of all, I want to thank you and Holly for giving up your Sunday morning to share this with us. This is excellent information. Really appreciate all the hard work you guys are putting into this program. I do have a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
One from a slide I saw you put up about missions.
Mm-hmm.
Mission changes happen a lot. We often
Right.
go out surface ops training missions, and then all of a sudden you get a call from the station. What if we have a boatload of Sea Scouts on board? What should happen?
What should happen is if you determine that you can still carry out, let's say, your SAR mission with them aboard, then you can proceed, but they can only observe. They cannot participate in any way. If you feel that their presence is inconsistent with being able to carry out that mission, then what you're going to have to do is put them off.
Okay.
That is Coast Guard policy on that.
So it sounds like it's a coxswain decision.
That's
right?
exactly right. And if the coxswain is unsure, he can call into the order issuing authority, probably your local small boat station, and say, we've got Sea Scouts aboard. What do you want us to do? And the the OOD will make that determination.
Okay, fantastic. All right, and my second question is about the activities in our wonderful new database, AuxData 2. Often we run into, because it's in its infancy, we run into some glitches here and there. But are there activity codes and training codes and things like that set up in AuxData 2 at the moment, so that, say, for example, I were to take, I'll just pick youth protection training. Is my IS officer going to be able to find that in the, when they go to log it in for under my member number?
Yes, the youth protection training is in the system, and that will display as a competency when it has been input into your record. Any time that is recorded for supporting this effort, there's an operation, actually there are two operation codes. For auxiliaries who are BSA registered, they put in an operation code of AUX-SCO2, and if they're not BSA registered, they put in a code of AUX-SCO1, and that's spelled out in the SOP. There aren't specific codes on, say, the 7030 for that, but there are codes that are close enough that make sense in the context of what we're doing with the young people.
Are there any codes for competencies that are not in the system yet that you might be waiting on?
Yes, we we put in an IT request to add codes for Sea Scout Adult Leader Basic Training, Safe Swim Defense, and Safety Afloat, but those have not, to the best of my knowledge, those haven't been added yet.
Okay.
You know, with the implementation of AuxData 2, they're just trying to fight fires with, you know, all sorts of things that weren't in the original release.
Sure, sure. But those are on the to-do list.
Yes, they are.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. We're a little bit over, and I know that they want me to be off no later than 20 after, so whoever comes in after us will be able to log in. Is there a last minute question that anybody wanted to ask? Okay, well, if you think of anything after we sign off, please reach out to Roy and ask your question. I feel pretty certain that he'll know the answer, but he's if he doesn't, he will get the answer back to you. Or of course, you can reach out to me. If you do that, please copy Roy so that he knows that you know, you're asking the question, so that he's prepared in the future for that question as well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your support of the auxiliary and the Sea Scouts. And please let us know if there's anything that we can do to support you in the future. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you too.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.